My name is Robert Mbarek, and together with Tevesia Ronzon and Sarah Mubareka, we will talk today about the monitoring bioeconomy in the European Union with a focus on jobs and growth. In the next slide, we can see the European bioeconomy strategy as it is defined with its holistic approach, which was first published in 2012 and updated in 2018. In a way, it was already anticipating the sustainable growth agenda of the European Green Deal. The sustainable and circular bioeconomy for Europe covers all sectors and systems that rely on biological resources, so animals, plants, microorganisms, and derived biomass, including organic waste, with their functions and principles. With this approach, the bioeconomy strategy shows many synergies with the Sustainable Development Goals. And if we now go to the first question, which is about how the monitoring can contribute to the governance of the European bioeconomy. We will start, Sarah, on the aspects.
Thank you very much, Robert. Well, we know that we can't assess the whole bioeconomy unless we look at the whole social ecological system, which is complex and adaptive. This resonates all the more true in today's complex world. Regarding governance, sometimes the problems we encounter have no absolute right or wrong answer. In order to try and tackle these problems that we know we can't solve, and in order to govern these systems under such uncertainty, we need new tools. We often argue that the bioeconomy is a shift in our societal and economic paradigm, but this includes also a shift in our governance paradigm. We want to offer a tool that facilitates agile governance. The bioeconomy, being a nonlinear and unpredictable system, requires reflexive governance. For this to work, sensors have to give signals of synergies or trade-offs. One of the sensors in the loop is a robust and reliable set of indicators, such as what Tevesia has developed.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. Yes, I agree with you that monitoring contributes to reflexive governance. And I'd like to illustrate that point from our experience at monitoring the number of workers and the value added in the different sectors of the bioeconomy. This is an activity we have initiated with the Nova Institute and that we are now continuing within the BioMonitor project. So we monitor those two indicators over time and across the different member states of the European Union. And this helps measuring the progress towards the fifth objectives of the European strategy for the bioeconomy, which is kind of an action for reflexive governance, since those data are then analyzed by the policymakers and used in official communication of the European Commission. The most important one today would be the communication of the new strategy for the bioeconomy, but also another important one was the communication on the future of food and farming.
I can imagine that there are many data and before that also methodological needs in order to develop a European bioeconomy monitoring system. I would invite Sarah to give us some reflections on this.
Thank you again, Robert. As I showed earlier, some problems are inherently uncertain and there are unknown unknowns, which we cannot, of course, include in our monitoring. However, when defining a monitoring system as a sensor of change, it's essential to at least capture all the knowns and the known gaps in our framework. Furthermore, in order to give a clear signal to policymakers, the way that the indicators are processed into conceptual knowledge becomes very important. I wanted to mention that the system boundaries are also important. If we artificially reduce them, then there might be feedbacks and impacts that we don't capture. This image highlights that we live in an era of big data where information is widely available. However, JRC's role is to take stock of the available information, streamline it and structure it, and eventually make sense of it so that it's helpful for policymaking. Tevesia has more specific examples.
Yes, indeed. Well, in our case, with the monitoring of employment and value added in the bioeconomics, we indeed face unknowns. And those are the bioeconomy sectors that are not well covered by Eurostat. For example, Eurostat reports on the number of people that are working for the manufacture of plastics, but we don't know how many of them are working for manufacturing bio-based plastics and how many are working for manufacturing fossil-based plastics. So in order to measure the employment and value added that is generated by bioeconomy activities only, we had to elaborate an ad hoc methodologies that I mentioned earlier with the Nova Institute. And in the meanwhile, there were other research institutes that also proposed their own methodologies, and they are now all assessed and investigated within the European Commission funded projects called Biomonitor that has as a name to then advise the European Commission on the different options on board. And I was also concerned with this problem of system boundaries that was underlined by Sarah, because in our case, there is, for example, a problem with the definition of what is a bioeconomy service. The definition of the bioeconomy from the European Union includes bioeconomy services, but we don't know exactly what they are, and we would need it for our system boundaries.
So far, so good. Now we have to look at the challenges for the implementation and the widespread use of a European bioeconomy monitoring tool. And Sarah will start again.
Thank you. I would like to use part of the question actually as an answer. So the main challenge of a good implementation is to develop something useful. The only way we can develop something useful is to be sure we're covering all aspects of the bioeconomy. This refers to the proper framing I spoke about earlier, to be sure we don't miss any signals. No one team is capable of doing that, which is why we opt for a participatory approach. Thanks to the Knowledge Center for Bioeconomy and the Community of Practice on Bioeconomy, we've been able to reach out to experts in member states, including our hosts here today, to experts in other commission services, to international organizations, and to academia. The logic behind this is that if we build a tool together, we will all understand it, buy into it, and believe in it. If people believe in it, we form a community that builds upon it, which makes it ultimately a more useful tool. Teresia has more concrete examples of the challenges she's facing in her work.
Yeah, indeed. And I would say that our first implementation challenge is to keep pace with the bioeconomy. Our data have a 3 years lag, and it's not totally adequate to catch what's going on with the emerging industries in the bioeconomy, the new startups and all the fast and recent developments in the bioeconomy. And then if we would talk about the widespread use of our monitoring indicators, I would say that the first challenge we have is to agree on a common definitions, because every stakeholder or every actor has his own focus. Some would focus more on biotechnologies, others more on the production of biomaterials, and others on ecological aspects of the bioeconomy. So in this sense, I support Sarah that dialogue and participatory approach are still needed to agree on a core definition of the bioeconomy that we can monitor and to which each stakeholder can then add his own focus. We have another challenge that is to downscale our data to a subnational level, since stakeholders express their need of more territorial data. And finally, I think our socioeconomic indicators have to be related with others that inform on the environmental, biophysical, or even innovation aspects of the bioeconomy. And this is exactly the aim of the biomonitoring system that will be launched by the JRC.
Thank you very much, Teresia and Sarah, for your insights. We can conclude that the bioeconomy certainly provides essential input to reach the Green Deal objectives, that is the European growth strategy. But its monitoring is crucial to ensure the synergies and the sustainability in the 3 dimensions Teresia just has mentioned. The specific indicators we have learned today, such as jobs and value added, are somehow established and already widely used. Nevertheless, they need permanent improvements, and we have heard about challenges which are still ongoing. A robust and reliable monitoring system which should serve the various stakeholders and ensure that policy making is done on an informed basis has to follow certainly a participatory and conceptually sound process in order to make it really a sustainable system which is also accepted and then can give the essential support to the policy making. The JRC and the GRTD and all its partners are fully engaged in this process, and so we continue all together this journey towards a bioeconomy monitoring system. Thank you very much for your attention.